Hi guys. I thought I'd do a live now before my only client today. Then I have a meeting with other therapists. So I'm going to do that. I never have time to do things like that. So that's good. I figured I would answer some questions if you guys have them. I just did a cute little video from this guy's comment, a rare securely attached commenter who said, yeah, basically sex drive changes over time and you can make that work. And if you love each other, women aren't just a sex object. So I was like astonished what that guy was even doing on the internet. You know, seems like completely opposite from many of the comments that I get on the internet. So I made him his own little video. I said, Healthy Mature Comment Award goes to this dude. So you guys should check that out. It's the reel before this one. And I hope that that guy, wherever he is, joins the secret group because certainly seemed to be an even-handed sort of person, which is what we like in the secret group. I also just had a commenter, and you can ask me questions at any time, obviously. I'm just going to talk. But I had a commenter who said basically, sex drive is purely dependent on the person that she's with. She's 58 and she's doing it 5 times a week now. And her ex-husband, it wasn't good with him because he sucked. And I was like, oh, how long you been with him? She's like, why does that matter? And I was like, because it's a honeymoon stage, right? I mean, come on. Like, maybe he is a better fit. But the only way you're doing it 5 times a week at 58 is because you just, are in a very, very new relationship, probably, And so I like to not help people think things that are wrong, So sometimes people go through stuff they see on the internet and they're like, oh, it was all about my ex was terrible and that's why the sex dropped off. No, it's not. It's because y'all didn't know what the honeymoon stage was and you still don't, and that's biological. And maybe your ex sucked and maybe you sucked and maybe the marriage sucked, but that's not why the sex dropped off, because you were having sex at the beginning, weren't you? And he sucked then too. So, it's important to realize these things so that we don't get our heart set on the idea that our sex life is solely due to our partner's deficiencies. Because a man being an asshole, yeah, right, so you don't want to have sex with him because he's an asshole. But, there's another variable there too. So even if he was awesome, you wouldn't feel drunk on new love like you did at the beginning anyway. What's ironic is that only people who are happily married know that. So people who are unhappily married all think that their sex life problems or their relationship problems in general are due to their partner. Whereas people who are more happily married have the same drop off. And they're like, oh, I guess that was the new love, because that is also a popular media trope. I mean, everybody knows that. Like after a while, the new relationship, it wears off, goes into a different stage. But if you're happily married, then you're like, oh, okay, so I see we have to kind of try to get in the mood now. We have to be intentional about sex. We have to be, we have to actually try to plan time together. It's not going to feel like it did at the beginning. And I love this person, so therefore I know it's not them. Whereas the people that don't love or like the spouse think, oh, it's them. So they never learn. They never learn about honeymoon stage because they're conflating 2 variables. Their dislike of their partner with the natural attenuation of their drive within monogamy. So it is always important to remember that honeymoon stage is a real thing. You're never going to meet the person where you're going to want to do it every single day as passionately as you do in the first year, in the 5th year, or in the 10th year. That's just not how it works, unless you're fluffing yourself up with a whole bunch of extra shit, testosterone, porn, whatever, then maybe, but then you're not as romantic, right? So something goes down, whether it's sex or whether it's romance, something goes down. It doesn't feel the same two years into your job as it does the first day on your job? Does it feel the same parenting a 2-year-old as it did when you brought home a newborn baby? Is the second year of having your dog as exciting as when you brought home your dog from the shelter? I mean, what? Let's use our brains, right? So So I wrote a rare internet comment that doesn't make me want to decapitate myself. And so you should go back to my reels and definitely view that one. And if you guys have any questions, certainly now is the moment. Some of you have said that you really like me doing these, and it gives you a chance to ask questions. So please do ask your questions at any time. I'm scheduled my podcast all the way out through the end of March. So you guys should all be listening to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. I just started season 4. Every time I do 200 episodes, I make it another season. So I was telling my son, and he's like, so do the seasons... I said, no, because I knew what he was going to say. Like, do the seasons have like a theme? Are they different? Like, why do you make a new season? So I said, no, they're not different at all. It's just me keeping on talking, but it is, you know, I guess for my own sanity, I do want to see the seasons progress, not to have season 1 of 600 episodes. That seems a little bit like no exit, you know? But anyway, maybe I will have some differences. Maybe I'll have a guest. Who knows? I was just a guest on somebody's podcast, so maybe I'll get another guest. I only have had one guest so far. It was Dad starting over. I was a guest with him. He was a guest with me. But then I can't just do them like literally whenever I want about whatever I want. So it's like, you know, there's push-pull on that. Anyway, give me some questions, guys. 19 of you watching. Please send your likes. I hope you've all enjoyed these lives. So please send your likes if you are watching me and if you like me doing these things. And somebody must have a question. Oh, there, Patrick. Sometimes people just, I think, feel bad when like nobody talks. So then they just ask a question like this one. How do you come up with the topics for your podcast? Well, Patrick, it's basically anything that I want to talk about. So some of them come from the secret group, from interesting conversations that we have in the secret group. You know, so then, and people always like when I make the podcast about like their question. Very rarely I'll do a reader question. I did that one recently. It's my most recent podcast is how do you reject your husband sexually without being mean? And it was all based on a reader question. I could read it to you if you want, because God knows nobody else is talking. So here, I'll read it to you. And then that'll pique somebody's interest for listening to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. That's available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Here, this was the reader question, Patrick. And I don't usually do these, so don't everybody go send me a bunch of questions. I save them for the lives or the secret group. But every so often somebody emails me and I feel bad. I used to do that all the time on the blog. So here's what somebody asked. As the higher drive partner in my marriage, I do most of the initiating and I hear no pretty frequently. Some no's feel a lot more like rejection than others. This is usually when they are accompanied by, we just had sex 4 days ago, you're insatiable. You just have a one-track mind. You should just take care of things yourself. Maybe if you had done insert chore or criticism, I would have said yes. You don't need sex, you just want it. Maybe sometime later. Or, what is wrong with you? Those are all examples of what his wife says. He continues, I understand often the answer is going to be no, because the circumstances aren't right, or she isn't in the mood, or she has her period. But I wonder if at least the process or communication could be improved. Is there any chance you would be able to do a post on what best practices in saying no would look like in order to minimize the associated hurt and feelings of rejection to one's spouse? So I did a whole post answering that for this guy. And I think it was pretty good. And I basically said, don't be a dick, you know? I basically said, do not be an asshole when you're rejecting your husband, just as you would not be an asshole if you rejected a friend making plans with you. Oh, God, here's this guy who asks me how many times I make love in a week. Let's block this person. Ban from stream. Rita says, I'm curious, what about your upbringing and or experiences has made you sex positive? Well, that was, nobody really talked to me much about it. So, unlike other areas in which you can be fucked up, having no real talking about it, kind of, you could just do whatever you want, you know? I mean, that was like an area, like I've shared that my parents were very anxious, so there were a lot of things they told me to be careful about. But that really wasn't one of them, because I think that there were like opposite things, like not wanting really, like that was something my mom didn't really want to talk about. So then she didn't really give any negative stuff about it. And my father was pretty open-minded. There were always books in the house that had sex scenes. I mean, it was the 70s. It wasn't the 70s when I was born. Thank you very much. It was 1981. But my parents got married in the 70s, and so they had all these books like Fear of Flying with Erica Jong. So I was a precocious reader, which may not be surprising to you guys, being as how prolific I am, right, with writing. But I read stuff with sex scenes in it pretty early, and I don't know, seemed fun. And then, of course, I had sex. And that's why I always say you got to have sex before marriage. You got to know what you're doing. You got to understand yourself. So, I had a lot of good experiences, a lot of fun. And it was the age of Sex in the City type of behavior in New York City. It was a very liberal time and place. So that's all the stuff that makes me sex positive. And when I would speak more and more to clients, and especially couples, it seemed like nobody was really talking about sex in prior couples counseling experiences. So I used to talk about sex, for the whole decade that I've been really publishing stuff. But I didn't used to talk about it as much, because I didn't realize kind of how little anybody else was talking about it. I just thought that was something everybody talked about in couples counseling. And then more and more, I started to realize that nobody was really talking about it, or very few couples counselors were really talking about it much. So then I started to talk about it more, and obviously that sex sells, right? So then that's a lot of the videos that have the most likes, and I don't mind talking about it. I think it's an important part of a relationship. Like many adult children of dysfunctional families, my life's work is kind of making couples happier, in a way that I could never really do growing up. That's like it's like imago theory, but for relationships. Most therapists had some sort of dysfunction in their upbringing that they're hoping to kind of remediate or heal in themselves and other people. And I never saw my parents kiss. I never did. And so I associated that with definitely bad because they were always unhappy too. So whereas there are some people who think that their parents are happy, but then they just never kiss or hug or touch. And those people, it's like hard for them to make the connection that part of their parents' unhappiness may well have been sexlessness or not having that affection. But for people whose parents are unhappy, it's a much easier link. So anything that they did, I assumed, was contributing to making them so unhappy and fighting all the time and what have you. So then as I got older, I thought to myself, well, I'll never do that. I'll never have a marriage without affection. And, all of those things intertwined, right? And created me being a therapist and somebody who's sex positive and this, that, and the other. So good question. Since I had very few other questions, I talked about it for quite a long time. So I hope you got a lot of information out of it. What did the other people say? Somebody said something in Arabic, which I don't speak. How do you keep the spark in a long-term relationship? Is there a secret sauce? No, John, there's no secret sauce. Don't buy things from people who tell you that there is. There is a honeymoon stage and it goes away. If you love each other and you're mutually respectful and loving, then your relationships, the passion will wax and wane and wax and wane. But if anybody tells you that you could basically be in charge of that, they're wrong. You can try to be a loving person, a good partner, a teammate, on the same page, Certainly try to keep yourself in good shape so that you don't veer dramatically away from how you looked originally. But if a woman really loves and respects her husband, her sex drive's still going to go down in monogamy, but she's going to make the effort, to be romantic. And of course, sometimes, people struggle, and that's what couples counseling is for. But there is no secret sauce. The trick is there is no trick. Any bullshit about you go to the gym, or if you make her jealous, or if you, act like you don't like her, and inspire dread, all that's garbage. Don't listen to that stuff, John. It is being a good person, a good partner, and working through your own stuff. So a lot of guys think they're being a good partner, but they're just being like a sulky brat a lot of the time, and women too. They're like, why doesn't he treat me like a princess? And they don't realize she just like bitches at him all the time. She doesn't realize that. So dealing with your own stuff so that you could be a good and loving and respectful partner is pretty much what you can do, you know? And if you are trying that and it's not going well anyway, then there's probably some blind spots, as there are for every human. So that's where therapy can come in. Or coaching, if you're somebody who doesn't like the word therapy, or who wants to deal with things in a more proactive fashion with more assignments. And you can always reach out to us at Best Life Behavioral Health for coaching or therapy or anything else, you know? But there is no magic bullet. It just is not a thing, you know? You could be like the best guy in the world. Like some guys are like, well, she wouldn't act like that with her celebrity crush. Yes, she would. If she was married to her celebrity crush for 15 years, she would be tired of sex with him too. Like, why can't people see that? And I know why, because media, porn, rom-coms, all this stuff makes it look like, you know, there are certain people where love is just effortless and they fall into each other's arms. And if it's porn, they fall into each other's other parts too, you know? And it's not, doesn't take any work. Of course it takes work. It shouldn't take it's like parenting, you know? Like if you love your kids, is every day so wonderful? Are you on tenterhooks waiting to hear the next story about Minecraft? No, and that's somebody that you love with your whole being. So how could it be easier with a spouse that is not biologically related to you and with whom it is not your entire life's imperative to keep them alive and love them? So of course, even if you love your partner, it's work. Marriage is some work. It's more work with some people than with others, but it is some work, just like parenting is. Anything worth doing is worth, you know, working on. So that's a lot of what I do with my clients. Help them manage expectations and understand passion and love and connection and romance wax and wane. You can certainly try to be as good of a person as you can, and as kind and loving and sweet. And for a man, be romantic if that's what she wants. For a woman, be sexual if that's what he likes. And those things feed on themselves, you know. And you can co-create a happy marriage intentionally. Both people just have to want it bad enough, you know, and put their egos aside, which is where the individual therapy really comes in. Because a lot of people say they'll do anything for their marriage. I have a post on this, actually, about one aspect of this. People who say that they'll do anything for their marriage, except they won't take meds for their disorder, whatever it is, like Adderall for ADHD. So you'll do anything for your marriage, but you will not try to take Adderall or an SSRI or something. And I know SSRIs have problems with sex drive, obviously. But, you know, if you are suicidally depressed and you do not, you know, that's worse. That's worse, and it does work for some. You know, all meds work for some people and don't work for others. But the point is, so that's just one example of a person who's putting their ego above really working on the relationship. If you say, oh, I'll do anything for my marriage, except I won't try therapy, I won't try meds, I won't go to the gym, I won't go to a doctor to see about whatever, sleep apnea, that's a big one. I love my wife, I just don't want to do a sleep study. You love your wife, really? And you snore so much that she can't be next to you. And you're not doing it because you kind of don't like doctors and it makes you feel a little awkward. So you're going to lose your wife, you know? Same thing for women. I really love him. I just don't want to have sex, like, ever. Well, shit, how are you going to stay married then? You know, I mean, how? How are you going to be in a happy relationship? I love him. You really love him? How do you love him? You won't ever have sex with him, but you love him? I have a podcast on that. Do you really love your husband? Pretty good, easy title to remember on the Dr. Psych Mom Show. All right, guys. I'm going to have to go in a few. Does anybody have one last question? One last question. Kaylee, so why do some people treat their partner poorly the day after getting laid? Avoidant attachment guys can do this, Kaylee, because they feel too close. They actually do feel close from sex, and that makes them feel really weird, and so then they push away. If you're not married to this guy that you keep asking me like kind of covert questions about, Kaylee, I would really reconsider, because I'm getting the sense, and from one to another, when I was your age, I did the same thing, go for these emotionally avoidant men. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. So if that resonates with you, girl, then, you should read all my stuff on emotionally avoidant men. Ray says, do you have any tips for dads with kids who like mom instead of dad? Yes, I do. Ray, it's called Help. My preschooler prefers One Parent. That's the title. And I talk about being the turkey sandwich parent versus the full turkey dinner parent. And if one parent is always bending over backwards and like enabling every little thing for the kids, then they're like the full turkey dinner, which the kid will always pick over the turkey sandwich of the parent who just does like whatever in kind of a regular way and has their own priorities at times. Read that one. It's called Help. My Preschooler Prefers One Parent. Dr. Psych Mom. Google that and then you'll get that article. Brian says, I love how you are so shoot from the hip. Thank you, Brian. That is who I am. And I could not do so many lives if I tried to affect a different persona. So it's kind of like, take it or leave it. You're welcome, Ray. Literally Google that, Ray, and you could bring it up in the group, too. I'm allowed to say that. I don't usually tell people about who's in the group, but he has a pseudonym. All right. Well, anyway, thank y'all. Oh, Kaylee. Hi, Doc. Hi, David. Kaylee says, he says it's you. But of course he does. But from my POV, he antagonizes till he gets a bad reaction. Kaylee, are you reading all my stuff? You are in classic pursuer distance or relationship. Google Dr. Psych Mom attachment panic. And think deeply about which parent was always like this, that you were always trying to get attention from and love, and you never fully could. Really, you don't have to be in this kind of bullshit. You should be in therapy. You're a smart person. You should be in therapy. You should be thinking about this stuff. You should be thinking about why you get into relationships with guys who are dysfunctional. That is dysfunctional on your part as well. It takes two to tango. So you get into these relationships. It seems like you're going to be finally the one that he treats different from everybody else. Finally, he's going to open up the coldness. He's going to crack open, and all of the butterflies and flowers are going to come out of his heart that has now been opened by you. But that is just shit that young women think. And I've written about it so much. So it's you're the preoccupied, he's the avoidant. Read every single thing that I ever wrote about it, including something that I think is literally titled, Don't Marry an Emotionally Avoidant Man. Do that, Kaylee. Do that. You should have done that already. You're following me for a long time. Read all that stuff, and you should really join the secret group, and all of these women that are older than you will tell you their experiences with the exact same dynamic that you're in, because it's not original, and you should know about it. You should. I'm telling you. All right. I'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you so much for participating in my live, and I'll talk to you guys later.